Aisha Tyler is one of the hardest working people in show business. She is the host of Whose Line Is It Anyway? She has her own cocktail line called Courage and Stone, but she's probably best known as the voice of Lana Kane on the hit animated program Archer, and we are proud to have Aisha with us today. I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and Aisha, the first question I want to ask you is, what do you love most about playing Lana Kane?
Well, gosh, that's such a good question. I love her as a character, and she's a blast to play because she's obviously tough and funny and flawed and a badass. But if I'm being really honest, other than the fact that the scripts are just relentlessly hilarious, and so therefore a joy to say out loud, just the best combination of smart and filthy. I don't have to get dressed up to play Lana Kane. I can go into the booth in my sweatpants, which I do. I do the opposite of what kids say, the phrase, the very most. I do the very, very least when I go in to play her, which is always nice.
You've gotten to deliver, and one of the things I love about the way that you play Lana Kane is the delivery of all her lines. But I'm curious, do you have a particular favorite line that you've gotten to deliver as Archer or as Lana on Archer?
Well, I don't know. Some of what my favorite line from the show is from the first season, and I think it might be like a little too racy.
Oh, go ahead. It's okay.
Well, okay, so I can't remember what episode this is. I want to say it's like the second or the third, and it is the episode where Archer has a dead hooker in the trunk of his car and is using everybody to cover it up. And I think he enlists Cyril in kind of hiding everything and from Lana, and Lana finds out. And then as punishment, she makes him go buy interracial porn at the corner store. And he goes, "Oh, from the nice old Asian lady." And Lana says yes. And I can't even remember the exact line perfectly, but she says that she wants him to get like the bare back and his hard dick and his ball slappiest porn that he can get. And it's just the most ridiculous line. And also Adam Reed and I had a really long conversation about whether slappiest or ball slappinest was a funnier way to say that. And I remember like it really in the end didn't matter how I said it because it was just the joy of having that long kind of linguistic conversation about which one of those was going to be a funnier way of saying that phrase. I was just like, oh, I'm in heaven. Like, this is the best job ever.
Yes, I remember that very clearly because that's one of my favorite episodes. I also love the line you have right before that where it cuts to you and you go, "I don't care if you have 50 dead hookers in the trunk."
She really didn't. She really didn't.
So was there ever, Lana has had such an interesting character arc over the years that Archer has been on. And I'm curious, was there ever a direction that the character went in that gave you apprehension when you first read it in the script that maybe you were like, I don't know about this?
Well, I love the show and I trust the guys that make it so inherently that I never felt like, oh no, we're making a mistake. I think one of the things that was a big surprise, or if not a surprise, just a jolt to both us as actors and then people who love the show was when we stopped being spies and we started kind of moving into other areas of work. And I think that really came about because Adam Reed was writing every episode of the show and he needed to stay excited and engaged. He needed to change the context so that he could just, be diving into the work from a different perspective and find new scenarios to come up with and new things to make funny. And so I loved it when we first pivoted to being cocaine dealers. That's probably my favorite season, the season of Archer Vice. That's probably my favorite season of the show. Just because, not because we were drug dealers, because it was just so ridiculous and so extreme, like what we did. Had all these references to things I loved when I was a kid, including, all Cannonball Run and Convoy, like all these great movies. And then obviously, Miami Vice and stuff that we all grew up on. But it was just so radical. Like everybody's behavior was so insane that season. I do remember that I was not apprehensive, but just wondering how it was going to work for Lana to stay as a spy and have a baby, which wasn't as extreme as her becoming a coke dealer and having a baby. So like my apprehension quickly dissolved because, you know, the show is just so extreme in the best way. And that's where a lot of the comedy comes from, that when we started to move contexts, it quickly became apparent that why people loved the show was the interaction between the characters and not particularly where they were. And that's why I think the show's stayed so interesting and so strong, because whether we're, you know, in an underground sea lab, or whether we're, you know, running a banana republic, or whether we're on Whole Island, the dynamic between the characters is really what makes the show. And so I've just never really worried about it going off the rails. But it's been fun every season to discover where we're going to go next.
I just chuckle because you just reminded me of the Whore Island gag, which is just like it's like from the pilot episode, but it's still so solid. So you have your pivoting to your career in general. I mean, you have your hand in so many different areas right now in terms of like acting, voice acting, directing, and leading like discussions on all sorts of things. I mean, I'm curious, who were your inspirations, the people who, when you saw what they did, you said, I want to do that?
I've had such a serpentine kind of career, you know, with things constantly evolving and changing, that I haven't ever really modeled myself on any one person. I feel like I've had different people that I've admired for different things. You know, when I was a young comic, oh God, you know, there were kind of like classic comedians that I really revered, you know, the Richard Pryors and the Bill Hickses and the Lenny Bruces, and then later, you know, Mark Maron, who I have always really wanted to emulate as a comedian. And, you know, and Sue Murphy, you know, there were like, but then a lot of these comedians were my peers. So it wasn't so much that I admired them as I just loved their work or what they did, but I wasn't trying to emulate them per se. And then, you know, moving through into what I'm doing now, it's interesting. Like you kind of have an idea in your head of what you want to do. It's less of like looking and seeing someone doing it and going, oh, I want to do that. And more thinking, God, I'd like to do this. And then looking around for people that you think are doing a really good job at it. So, you know, as an acting director, I feel like Clint Eastwood and Ben Affleck are two directors who maintain an acting career, did extraordinary work as directors, and were able to navigate the two. But I don't know that I'm really strange in that I avoid kind of trying to emulate other people, because I really feel like I want to try to be as singular as I can in my own work. And it's interesting because people are always asking me like, what comedies do you watch? And I really don't watch that much comedy because I don't want other people's comedic ideas to leak into my head. I want to make sure that I'm trying to stay as like close to my own ideas as possible, and being respectful of other people's kind of creative boundaries. So it's weird. I wish that I had a better answer for that question.
No, I like that answer. I like it because as you say, you chart your own path, and I think you do such an incredible job on that. And speaking to that, one of the other gigs that you have, you're currently the host of Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I'm curious. I mean, that just has to be, you know, just being around all those, these just very quick-witted, funny people. What is it that you love most about hosting that show?
You know, I was a fan of that show. I was a fan of Whose Line way before I was offered that job. And I've known Drew Carey for years from the stand-up world. We've, you know, worked out in the same clubs together here in LA. I've known Wayne for years. So it was a thrill to be asked, because I already loved that show just as a fan, honestly. And it's an unusual occurrence for someone to get a job on a show that they loved, you know, way before. Like, I've been really lucky, like with 24 and with Friends and with Criminal Minds. There were shows I already really liked and enjoyed watching before I ever got the gig. And that was definitely true with Whose Line. I actually started out, like, my very first kind of like acting and comedic workouts were in sketch and improv. So that, like, when I was in high school, that was what I was doing. So I was like kind of coming home for me as an artist, because I was great. Like, my early comedic training was in sketch and improvisational comedy. And it's a blast, because those are three of the greatest improvisers working, period, ever. They have a collective like 60 years of improv experience, maybe more. And they're so funny to watch and to get to play with now, as I jump into the games when I can, that my first season of the show, my very first taping, and like that whole first year, the thing I remember most was they kept saying, like, you have to stop laughing so loud and clapping so hard, because it's like bleeding into the sound for the whole show. Because I would just be watching, you know, I would just be enjoying it, and like forgetting to do the part where I was buzzing and ending games and stuff like that. And so I'm a fan first, and I always will be. And it's just been a joy, like I said, to watch them work, watch them evolve, get to play, get to jump into the games with them. We actually right now, because Who's on this, I think is the 8th season of the show on CW, is airing right now on Monday nights. And we're doing a little thing every Monday at 4 o'clock on the West Coast and 7 o'clock on the East Coast, right before the show airs at 8 on the East Coast, where we literally just get on Zoom and you know, shoot the shit for an hour. We don't really playing games, we're just chatting, and we answer questions. And it's just a joy to see those guys, because they're just consistently so funny and such a delight to be around.
Segueing to another area of what you've done, I'm curious about what your experience was like on The Talk, and in particular, what it was like being part of their Daytime Emmy win in 2017.
Yeah. Oh, there she is. She's right there.
Oh, there she is. Oh,
there she is. But I try to cover her when I'm in my office, because, you know, otherwise I'm just a jerk. Like, oh, hi, everybody. Here's my Emmy. But it was, you know, it was a thrill. It was a real thrill. That was such an easy show to do, and I don't mean to be glib, like, oh, like it was easy, but it was just such an enjoyable place to go every day. The job was just to speak your mind amongst friends. And I enjoyed the company of those women so much, because it was a live show. You know, we'd shoot it, we'd be done by noon every day. I was able to pursue other creative, you know, efforts, you know, at the same time. Like, you know, when I was on The Talk, I was on 4 shows at one time. I was doing The Talk in the morning, I was going to Criminal Minds in the afternoon, I was shooting Who's Line on the weekends, and recording Archer and The Cracks. And it was just a really energizing time. And you know, Daytime is its own animal. It's a really specific kind of audience and a really specific voice. It was really fun to be able to bring my perspective to that space, and which, you know, and to really, the thing I loved about The Talk that's different than a lot of other daytime shows, especially daytime panel shows, was it was really a show where we weren't beating each other up for an hour, where we were really modeling, and we weren't making it up, it's how we really were with each other, but we were modeling a dynamic where women were not trying to tear each other down or pull each other apart. There's a lot of sniping that goes on during the day, and I think also in reality television, there's this architecture where women are shown to be just constantly combative and constantly toxic towards each other. And it's just like represents none of my female relationships at all. All of my female relationships are just like, how can we, you know, lift each other up and have a good time? And it just really enervated me that you just see this constant negativity between women that I think people think make good TV, but I think is totally awful. So we're really proud of the fact that it was a show where we didn't agree all the time, for sure, but we also weren't trying to undermine each other. And so I'm really proud of that. I was really, really happy when we won the Emmy. I thought we took a lot of risks on that show, and I'm really glad that it was.
So actually, and you've actually extended yourself in a new way now during this pandemic. You started doing your own piece of pandemic broadcasting that involves cocktails and raising money for charity. So could you tell us more about this, how we can watch, and where did the idea to do it came from?
Absolutely. So it's interesting because obviously, you know, the way we're all staying connected now, most of us, many of us, is, you know, via the internet. And people were doing these happy hours with friends where, you know, and I was doing some with friends of mine from home. And I just thought, you know, a lot of people are feeling really disconnected. It's great if you're sheltering in place and you've got, you know, a roommate or a significant other, or even if you've got a dog, you know. But a lot of people, I'm so jealous of people with dogs right now, by the way. Every time I look outside and people are walking their dogs, I'm like, I just need to borrow a dog. So I have an excuse to go outside every day for now. But I just thought it would be nice to find a way to give people that feeling that we all have, and we all, you know, of going to meet our friends after work for a drink. And I also wanted to make sure that I did something that had a charitable component. It's really important to me to give back. You know, I came from a working class family. We had very, very little when I was growing up. And, I'm lucky that I'm in a job that, it provides all of, these kind of perks and this abundance, but I don't take it for granted. And I don't think that like I'm owed anything. I think if anything, the good fortune I've had requires me to give back commensurately. So I'm always trying to find ways to do more. And these happy hours have been great. Like I did one just to see, and people were like, for people who are stuck at home, it's just so nice to have an hour where you feel like you're connecting with other people. I make a different classic cocktail every happy hour. They're on Tuesdays and Fridays at 5 o'clock on the West Coast and 8 o'clock on the East Coast. I make a different classic cocktail and I focus on a different COVID-related charity every happy hour. So we've done, and I really try to make sure that it's a strong charity with a good efficiency rating, so we know that the money that people are donating is getting to the people that need it. So we've done the American Red Cross, Team Rubicon, which is an organization that retrains veterans and deploys them for disaster relief. It's a great organization. The Feeding America, and the International Rescue Committee, which is also a really great organization that works on displaced people, not just internationally, but domestically. And if you think about, we're all talking about sheltering in place, but what if you don't have a place to shelter? So International Rescue Committee does great work with people who are either homeless or displaced or housing vulnerable. And they've just been really, really great experiences. Quite frankly, I get tipsy and I answer a bunch of questions, and it's always really fun. And we raise money for charity. And then the last one we just did, the whole ArcherCast did a table read of an episode, and we raised a bunch of money, and we partnered with FX and Disney to raise money for Feeding America. So they've been really gratifying. I can't think of anything better than getting tipsy for a good cause. And for people who are watching at home and are feeling a little dissociated, like, how this is such a big problem, I don't know how to help, I don't know where to start. It's a nice way to kind of just go, hey, here's a turnkey solution if you want to donate. And it's also a way to get out information if people are in need and need resources. So we'll probably do another Archer table read. And I'm going to try to enlist my other shows, try to get Criminal Minds people to do a couple for charity as well. I'm going to be talking to Robot Ferdowsi, who is an actual rocket scientist, about how the space program is working right now during the pandemic, what they're doing. So it's always just a fun way to kind of engage with people, deliver some content, some fun entertainment, and do something for charity. And it's on Facebook and YouTube, Tuesdays and Fridays at 5 and 8 on the East Coast. They've been really fun. And, I had a podcast for a long time. So for all the fans out there that are like, God, I miss Girl and Guy, I wish you'd bring it back. It's been nice to engage all those people again. Because that was a 1-hour podcast where I interviewed different people. And so those people are kind of re-engaging with the happy hours as well.
And you said it's on, you can access through Facebook and YouTube?
Facebook and YouTube, just Aisha Tyler on Facebook and YouTube. I was doing them on Instagram, but it's really hard you can only add one person on an Instagram chat. So when I started doing bigger ones, more people were joining. We had the Criminal Minds cast with the Archer cast. We were Zooming and then streaming those to Facebook, my Facebook and YouTube page. I say we, it's just me. It's just me doing all of this. This is the best. I did one, when I did my first Zoom one, which was, I think, like a partial Criminal Minds cast one. I went on really early to make sure everything was working. And then everyone came on YouTube and they're like, we've just been watching you kind of like talk to yourself in front of your computer. Like, okay, I think I do this, I think I do that. And it was really like a really entertaining 10 minutes for people who signed on early. It's just me doing this. I don't have a team, obviously.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Aisha. We wish you all the best this Emmy season. And to our viewers, please like this video, subscribe to our channel to see our most up-to-date content, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks again, Aisha.
I wanted to mention one other thing before we go.
Oh, yes.
So sorry, which is that my cocktail line, Courage and Stone, which you mentioned at the beginning, we are donating 30% of all of our online sales to the U.S. Bartenders Guild, because that is a part of the of the economy. You know, a lot of restaurants are pivoting to takeout and delivery, but bars can't do that. So we're supporting bartenders, which are notoriously work for very little. They live on tips. They don't have insurance and things like that. So Courage and Stone, if you guys want a cocktail, the I concept is delivered straight to your home, no mess, no mixing. And then 30% of the proceeds are going to support the U.S. Bartenders Guild. So it's just another way that we're trying to kind of find ways to give back and help keep people afloat until the economy opens back up.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Aisha.
Thank you.